Good morning, everybody. Buongiorno, dobro jutro, kalimera. I am very glad to welcome you in the final conference of the ARIEL project, promoting small-scale fisheries and aquaculture, transnational networking in the macro region of Ionian and Adriatic. Can I have the first slide, please? Okay, the next one. So the first thing, I first of all welcome everybody here. I want just to say two little words about our project. Then later on you will hear more about it from Dr. Gratti and the rest of the speakers. The only thing I want to say is that the ARIEL is co-financed by the Interreg Adrian program, which is a European transnational program that involves countries in the Adriatic and the Ionian Sea. In our project, Croatia, Greece, Italy, and Montenegro were the participant countries. Next slide, please. And the only thing that I want to mention in this first presentation is that our partnership was our strength. What I mean is that institutional partners as well as scientific partners, they were involved. Institutional partner, administration like us, region of Western Greece, Marshall region, Sicilian region, and also Dalmatia County, and from Croatia, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development from Montenegro. At the same time, scientific partners that were involved from Ancona, ISMAR, which has a different name right now, but Dr. Gratti will mention that. The Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries from Croatia, the University of Montenegro, the Institute of Marine Biology, as well as the Hellenic Center for Marine Research from Greece. Next slide, please. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was the approach to innovation, like what we try to do to find the technical and non-technical or organizational ideas to innovation, a new idea successful in practice. And a new idea would be either a product or a service or a production process. In any way, a new way of organizing things in small-scale fisheries and aquaculture. And ARIEL was intended to facilitate the discovery process using bottom-up model, meaning bringing together policymakers, entrepreneurs, advisors, academics, research institutes in thematic groups in order to find practical solutions for day-to-day needs. Next one. And I wanted to show you a few pictures of this bottom-up model. We had meetings with stakeholders, filling out questionnaires, interviews. One of our fishermen said, I personally don't believe we fishermen can cooperate. And that was the same story in all the countries. So discussing ideas, evaluating proposals in order to find what innovation means. If we manage or not, we are going to see it in the next few presentations. Can I have the next one, please? So I welcome you to the final conference of ARIEL project, cod.278, and I hope you will find it interesting and inspiring. Thank you very much. This is who we are here, the group of region of Western Greece. Thank you for your attention, and I would like to call to the floor Mrs. Salma, the Vice Governor of Tolakarnania. Please, Mrs. Salma. The floor is all yours. We don't hear you. Sorry. You have to turn on your microphone.
Αγαπητοί συμμετέχοντες, σας καλωσορίζω στην τελική συνδιάσκεψη του προγράμματος ARIEL, προώθηση μικρής κλίμακας αλληλείας και υδατοκαλλιέργειας διακρατικού δικτύου στην ευρύτερη περιοχή Αδριατικής Ιωνίου, που πραγματοποιείται από την περιφέρεια Δυτικής Ελλάδας.
Dear participants, welcome to the final conference of the ARIEL project, promoting small-scale fisheries and aquaculture, transnational networking in the Adriatic-Ionian macroregion, which is held by the region of Western Greece.
Δυστυχώς, δεν μπορούμε να σας καλωσορίσουμε με φυσική παρουσία εξαιτίας των περιορισμών λόγω του COVID-19. Αλλά ανυπομονούμε να σας φιλοξενήσουμε στην περιοχή μας στο μέλλον, όταν αυτό θα είναι εφικτό.
It is a pity that we cannot welcome you in person to our beautiful region due to the COVID-19 restrictions, but we are looking forward to hosting you in our area when it will be possible in the future.
Οι λάτρεις του νερού θα μπορούν να απολαύσουν μια μεγάλη σε μήκος ακτογραμμή με αρκετές αμμούδεις αλλά και βραχώδεις παραλίες, δύο μεγάλου μήκος φυδωτά ποτάμια με θαυμάσιες εκβολές και 9 φυσικές λίμνες.
Here, water enthusiasts can enjoy the experience of our extensive shoreline with many sandy and rocky beaches, 2 long and winding rivers with their wonderful estuaries, and no less than 9 scenic lakes.
Στην περιφέρειά μας και ειδικότερα στην περιφερειακή ενότητα Αίτωλο-Ακαρνανίας, η μικρής κλίμακας αλληλεία και η ιχθυοκαλλιέργεια είναι δύο σημαντικοί τομείς αγροτικής παραγωγής και εργασίας.
In our region, and especially in the regional unit of Aitolo-Karnania, small-scale fisheries and aquaculture are two very important sectors in terms of agricultural production and employment.
Στην Αίτωλο-Ακαρνανία υπάρχουν περισσότερα από 850 μικρά σκάφη που αποτελούν τον επαγγελματικό στόλο αλληλείας. Υπάρχουν επίσης αρκετές μονάδες εντατικής υδατοκαλλιέργειας που είναι υπεύθυνες για το 25% του συνόλου της παραγωγής της ελληνικής υδατοκαλλιέργειας.
In Aitolo-Karnania, we have more than 850 small vessels in our professional fishing fleet. We also have many intensive aquaculture farms, which are responsible for more than 25% of the total Greek aquaculture production.
Επιπλέον, η περιοχή μας περιλαμβάνει το 40% των υδάτινων περιοχών λιμνοθάλασσας στην Ελλάδα, όπου συναντά κανείς αρκετές μονάδες εντατικής υδατοκαλλιέργειας, αλλά και αλληλείας στη λιμνοθάλασσα, η οποία παράγει υψηλής ποιότητας θαλασσινών προϊόντων, όπως το φημισμένο αυγοτάραχο Μεσολογγίου.
In addition, our region has about 40% of all the wetland lagoon areas in Greece, where you can find several extensive aquaculture lagoon fisheries, which produce top-quality seafood, such as the famous Mesolongi botarga.
Ο συνολικός στόχος του προγράμματος ARIEL, που είναι η προώθηση ενός δικτύου συνεργασίας ανάμεσα σε μικρής κλίμακας αλληλεία, υδατοκαλλιέργεια, ερευνητικές ομάδες, αλλά και φορείς χάραξης πολιτικής σε όλη την Αδριατική και την περιοχή του Ιωνίου, θα συμβάλλει στη βιώσιμη ανάπτυξη αυτών των δύο τομέων.
The overall goal of the ARIEL project, which is the promotion of networking among small-scale fisheries and aquaculture stakeholders, research groups and policymakers in the whole Adriatic and Ionian region, will contribute to the sustainable development of these two important sectors.
Με μεγάλη χαρά σας καλωσορίζω στην τελική συνδιάσκεψη του προγράμματος ARIEL. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ για τη συμμετοχή σας και ελπίζω οι εργασίες του προγράμματος να θέσουν τις βάσεις για μια επιτυχημένη συνεργασία μεταξύ των εμπλεκόμενων φορέων. Σας εύχομαι μια ευχάριστη και παραγωγική μέρα.
It is therefore with great pleasure that I welcome you to the final conference of the ARIEL project. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope that the work of this project will provide the basis for successful cooperation among the parties involved. I wish you a pleasant and productive day.
Thank you very much. And now we would like to call Mr. Theodoros Vassilopoulos, the Vice Governor for Agriculture and Economics of the region of Western Greece. I don't know if he has been connected to our network. Not yet. Okay, then maybe we can go on with our ARIEL storytelling video, which was prepared by Marche Region in Italy. And in case he gets in, then we can hear him after the video. Okay?
small-scale fishery, including more than 70% of the total fishing fleet, and aquaculture are two of the faster-growing sectors in most of the Adriatic and Ionian communities. They represent key drivers for Adriatic and Ionian regions' sustainable growth. However, in response to the rising demand for fish and fishery products, there is also a call for more responsible management and for innovation. ARIEL project, funded by the Interreg Adrian program, put together different actors to work and test new ideas, find solutions for specific innovation needs, and develop concrete opportunities. The ARIEL partnership has worked together since 2018, fostering the interactive engagement of local breeders and fishermen under a common methodology inspired to the concept of innovation brokering. In each country, project partners organised innovation brokering events, connecting key innovation actors of small-scale fisheries and aquaculture sectors, and accompanying the operators from the innovation discovery process to their operations financing. New solutions and ideas have been tested in each country. Fishermen have worked in the field together with researchers and institutions. In Italy, the project coordinator, the Institute for Biological Resources and Marine Biotechnologies of the National Resource Council cooperated with Marche region for a pilot activity focused on the testing of dolphin deterrent technology to reduce damages produced in the small-scale fisheries nets at sea. Sicilian region tested the Rainbow Network by developing a bycatch reduction technology that minimized the capture of unwanted organisms, preserving the total capture value. In the study were examined the effects of trammel illumination with UV LEDs on interaction rates of non-target species. In Croatia, the Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries worked on different ideas. The testing of a trammel net, Sipera, specifically manufactured to reduce bycatch. That led the percentage of discards under 10%, and the testing of the repellent functionality of pingers against the mussels prediction by gilt-head sea bream. The Hellenic Centre for Marine Research and the region of Western Greece carried on a pilot activity to increase the efficiency of feeding procedure in aquaculture process and reducing food waste using AQUA underwater cameras. They also implemented a study to detect the potential for income diversification of fishing tourism. In Montenegro, activities of the Institute for Marine Biology, in cooperation with the Ministry, focused on the study of bycatch and discarding trammel net used for caramote prawn and other nets of different mesh sizes to provide guidelines for potential basis of future derogation actions, supported by scientific evidence and monitoring plans. The Institute also tested the experimental farming of sea sponge due to wide range of application of their extracted compounds. Further, the partners worked for the development and testing of an app for mobile phone called Viema to support the local and direct selling of the catch of the day. VIAMA promotes the development of a local market that recognises and adds value to small-scale fisheries seafood products obtained by more sustainable fishing practices, socially fair and in a transparent way. ARIEL promoted training and capacity building activities to increase skill and competencies of the involved actors on crucial themes for innovation: traceability and quality, seafood branding, new fishing and aquaculture technologies. The researchers took part in transnational training sessions to address knowledge exchange and jointly identify best practices and common research challenges. The ARIEL Virtual Innovation Community has been set up to share the knowledge and the results achieved, support the networking function, and keep on partnering around innovative ideas.
Thank you very much for the presentation, let's say, of the video. I think it was pretty informative so that you would see what we were doing the past 2 to 3 years. So I would like to call to the floor Dr. Fabio Gratti, our lead partner, in order to give us a small presentation on the ARIEL in a nutshell. Fabio, please. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Orkistis. Thank you. You can share the presentation. I cannot see it.
Not yet.
So, Orkistis, you already spoiled the first 2 slides. So please go to the first one. Okay, as you already said, ARIEL is an innovation project which is funded in the framework of the first call of Interreg Adrian. And the project started in 2018 and will end next month for a total of 3 years. And as you already said, the real added value of ARIEL is the partnership, including 4 research institutes and 5 institutional organizations from 4 countries: Croatia, Montenegro, Greece, and Italy. Next slide, please. ARIEL focuses on 2 key sectors in the Adriatic macro region, let's say the small-scale fishery and aquaculture. And the main goal was to promote an array of solutions for innovation speed up, and also to increase the capacity of key innovation actors to attract and develop innovation within a regional system. The overall vision of ARIEL is to promote an open innovation, and for these 2 sectors, in collaboration with policymakers, research, and business. Please, next. So the kind of innovation which is proposed and promoted in ARIEL is something that can be useful for small-scale fisher and fish farmer by providing success in practice. And this can be, for example, a new idea, a product, or just a new way of organizing things. This approach is based on the interactive engagement of this sector with the aim of answering to their needs in a practical way. Next. So the logic of intervention is very simple. The first step was a framework analysis on the real needs of small-scale fishery and aquaculture by means of a series of consultation. And then, following a bottom-up approach, a number of pilot actions have been identified and performed. And finally, the project results have been translated into policy and technical recommendation for small-scale fishery and aquaculture innovation governance in the Adrian area. Next, please. So the slide summarized the pilot action, which were focused on small-scale fishery. They are another value add of ARIEL, acting as, let's say, a little project within the big framework of ARIEL. In this case, we tested dolphin deterrent devices that I will show later on, and innovative gears with improved selectivity. And we developed a new app for fish product that you already saw in the video for product marketing, and also a fishing tourist business plan. Next. Concerning aquaculture, we tested underwater cameras for increasing the efficiency of feeding in fish farm, acoustic pingers for reducing the impact of sea bream in mussel farming, and we also explored the potential use of alternative species for aquaculture. And anyway, more detail on both fishery and aquaculture pilot action will be given in a dedicated presentation later on. Next. So the two concluding slides summarize ARIEL, our project, in numbers. In this one, you can see in the framework analysis, a total of 90 audit tools were collected from the two sectors. 5 SWOT tables were obtained for both sectors, and 1 transnational networking event was organized. Next. 2 mobility weeks have been organized for researchers, as well as 3 capacity building seminars and 4 training seminars for small-scale fisher and aquaculture operators. In total, we performed 7 pilot actions for small-scale fishery involving 24 fishers, and 4 pilot actions for aquaculture involving 4 farmers. And let's say now we can start with the series of presentation. Thank you. Next is the last.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabio. That was pretty informative, and also seeing all the numbers of all the actions. And I think I need to give the floor now to Dr. Sanya Macic-Skoko, if I'm saying it correctly, Sanya, in order to introduce the first session of our presentations, all the pilot actions. Sanya, the floor is all yours.
In the video.
Okay, now I can start. Sorry, once again, I was in a hurry a little bit. Good morning to all of you once again. We will start with our first session. It's about pilot actions. We call the first session Transnational Innovation Brokering, ARIEL Solutions for Daily Innovation Needs of Small-Scale Fishers and Aquaculture Operators. I kindly ask you for first slide of the presentation. The next one, please. Okay. Me and the Institute of Oceanography and Fisheries was the leader of Work Package 2. Work Package 2 was dedicated to pilot actions addressed towards different key players, both at regional and transnational levels. In our previous presentations of Arkistis and Fabio, and also from our storytelling videos, you see a number of goals from the application program form. But the main goals were increase strength and skills and competencies, support innovation exchange and uptaking, bridge the gap between the science and the operators, promote research and development investments in small-scale fisheries and aquaculture, and of course, promote networking at the regional and transnational level. Here you can see 4 pictures from our brokering events, photos. And on the next slide, please, as Fabio previously said, a list of more than 40 pilot studies across of our 6 innovation brokering events was created. However, due to time framework of the project and, of course, limitation of funds, we selected just few of them per region. And finally, we selected 11 ones. And today, in the next presentation, you will see the main outputs of those pilot action and also recommendation for our operators. So I think that now we can start with the presentation. The first one is from the group of reducing depredation and bycatch in small-scale fisheries. The presentation will give us Dr. Fabio Gratti, and the title is Testing Pingers to Reduce, Prevent Dolphin Damages. Fabio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sania. It's me again. We talk about dolphin now, when the presentation is ready. Here we go. So next slide. Okay. So as you probably know, dolphins are increasingly becoming a plague for the small-scale fishery in the Adriatic, but I think in the whole Adrian macro region, as they prey on the fish which is captured, which is a mesh in the set net, and with the result of breaking the nets and causing economic loss to the sector. This problem was already known by scientists, but again, it was pointed out by small-scale fishery during the innovation brokering events, and therefore we decided to dedicate a pilot action for this issue. Next, please. Okay. So a solution is to use these advices, which are the dolphin deterrent devices, which can be attached to the net. And these devices are able to keep dolphins away from the nets, thanks to ultrasound emission that interacts with the echo localization system of the dolphins. Next. In this map, you can see where we performed the pilot action. So in Italy, in Croatia, and in Montenegro. Next. And here it is you can see the sample strategy. It's very, very simple. We compared the catches and the damages of set nets provided with these devices, with DDD, with those of nets, let's say the control nets, which were not provided. And as the effect of each pinger is around 500 meters of radius, this was the distance on average used by fishermen. Next one. Here you can see some preliminary results. I focused on Italy and Croatia, but we have similar results also for Montenegro, where you can see that in terms of catches, in red, you can see the control side, the trend of the control net, and in blue you can see the trend of the net provided with DDD. Overall, you can see a slight increase of catches in the nets provided with DDD. This is was mainly obtained in Italy with the 70% more than the control net, while in Croatia this was not so evident, only 3% more. Next slide. But as you can see here, in terms of damages, the red line show the cumulated impact of dolphin on nets, and you can see that the trend is very similar in Italy and Croatia, this means that the dolphins start to predate, to attack the net since the very beginning of the fishing season. And in the blue line, you can see the effect on the net provided with DDD, and overall the impact is lower, and anyway at a certain point also dolphins start to attack also this net. Okay, next one. So in conclusion, what we can say that these devices represent a valid solution for small-scale fishery by slightly improving the catches and by strongly improving the protection of the gear from dolphin predation. And therefore, they can contribute to improving the economic performance of small-scale fisher. Nevertheless, I think that additional field trials would be needed to confirm such a result and to investigate the duration of deterrent effect of pingers. And next, and this done. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Fabio, for this nice presentation. I got a message that we forgot a video, so maybe now we can start with the video.
Mi chiamo Claudio, sono presidente della cooperativa Musciolinari Molo Nord, quindi del porto di Ancona, e ho partecipato a questo progetto con la regione e l'IRPAM per vedere se riuscivamo a, come si dice, abbiamo un problema con i delfini qui da noi, quindi con dei pinger che si suppone respingano, li tengano lontani dalle reti. Abbiamo fatto un progetto per sperimentare queste apparecchiature. Abbiamo fatto diverse sperimentazioni per vedere se erano realmente, se funzionavano bene, per respingere, diciamo, la presenza dei delfini che ci rompono le reti. E abbiamo fatto varie prove con le reti, sia con queste apparecchiature sia senza di queste, a giorni alterni o in diverse zone di pesca, e per un buon periodo abbiamo visto che insomma, in confronto alle altre barche o alle reti, quando non c'erano queste apparecchiature, realmente c'era una grossa differenza per il pescato e anche per le reti, perché le reti chiaramente i delfini le rompono per prendere il pesce, e dopo è anche a discapito loro, perché comunque sia si mangiano la plastica delle reti. Quindi già con questi non ti si avvicinano le reti, quindi va bene per loro e va bene anche per noi. Sarei a un progetto come questo perché ho visto che comunque sia è servito, e quindi se si può andare avanti con la cosa, io sono disponibile. Questo è un nuovo progetto di Irma che per facilitare per noi la vendita, perché abbiamo delle fasce di mercato, siamo un po' penalizzati, diciamo, dalla grande pesca, quindi stiamo con questo progetto, vedremo di riuscire a fare una vendita tipo a chilometro zero, come succede per i prodotti agricoli, queste cose qua, e anche questo tutto in via di sperimentazione. Purtroppo si è fermato a causa anche questo del coronavirus. Vedremo se il prossimo anno si riuscirà a sviluppare e a vedere dei giovamenti anche per questa vendita.
I'm not sure if Dr. Vecchione is with us. I got a message he's not here. So we have some extra time for questions for Fabio or for us that were working on the pingers for prevent dolphin damages. Maybe some comments? No, there is no comments. Okay, then I think that we can proceed. The next group of our presentation was improvements in fishing gear technologies. And the first one is result of Croatian pilot studies conducted in Istria. It will be presented by Dario Vrdoljak, and the name of the presentation is Testing Tremel Nets for Cuttlefish, Sepia officinalis, provided with a technical device aimed at reducing bait catch. Dario, the floor is yours.
So, good morning, everyone. So, I can start. Gill nets and tremel nets are probably the most commonly used fishing gear along coastal Eastern Adriatic. Next slide, please. For this pilot action, the study area was in Northern Adriatic, in the west coast of Istria, and the survey was during 3 months of survey. So from April, May, and June, tremel nets that have traditionally used in this area are tremel nets of the smaller height called listarice, and with main target species as Solea vulgaris, and the mesh size of 40 millimeters. In this area also they use specific tremel nets called Sipara, and in that tremel nets the minimum mesh size is 32 millimeter, and that tremel nets is targeting cuttlefish Sepia officinalis. The selectivity of tremel net Sipara in catching cuttlefish Sepia officinalis and bycatches were investigated. The quantitative composition of the bycatch of the tremel net Sipara with and without that additional net head in the lower part of the net was compared to reduced bycatches of other species like Molluscas holoturia echinodermata. So you can see on this, in the middle pictures, you can see on the left picture there is additional head in the lower part of the net, and we call that part alceta. The additional part was constructed as a gill net with a minimum mesh size of 32 millimeters, maximum height up to 0.5 meters, and made of thicker string. The tremel nets were standard construction with 1.8 meter high, 180 meter long, with an inner mesh size of 32 millimeters and outer of 150 millimeters. And all the results were compared to deterrent catchability. Next slide, please. The qualitative quantitative composition of a tremel net Sipare without alceta, expressed as catch over 100 meter of all 3 months of survey, is shown in table on left. So you can see the target species, Sepia officinalis, was represented in the total catch with 26.4% in terms of abundance. Other dominant species in catches are Hexaplex trunculus, Bolinus brandaris, Scorpena porcus, and Holoturia tubulosa. And the discard portion accounts for 45.15%. Next slide, please. The qualitative quantitative composition of tremel net with alceta is expressed on the same way as a catch over 100 meters of all 3 months of the survey, and that is the results are shown in the table on left. So target species Sepia officinalis was represented with 71.8%, following by Scorpena porcus, Lisa ramada, and Erythria verrucosa. In this tremel net, the discard was 3.97%. Next slide, please. So, conclusions, Sepia officinalis was the most represented species in the catch in the both designs of the tremel nets. However, 26.4% of Sepia officinalis were caught in construction without alceta, and in the case of alceta's catchability increased to 71.8%. In tremel nets with alceta design, the percentage of discards never exceeded 10%, while without alceta design, discard is always around 50%. And the percentage representation of the discard portion and the number of different species in the Landix will fluctuate spatially, but the thermal net's vital zeta decreases the catchability of benthic invertebrates in the lower part of the net. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Dario. The next presentation is also from Croatian pilot studies. It's about testing selective thermal nets for common soles, Sola sola or Sola vulgaris, having 40 millimeters and 42 millimeters mesh size, aimed at reducing bycatch. I also, please, can you give us the next slide? Just a short intro. As Dario said, gill nets, 1-layer and 3-layer thermal nets are probably the most commonly used fishing gear along coastal Eastern Adriatic used by small-scale fishers. However, regional differences conditioned by the distribution of target species exist in frequency of their use. At Peninsula, Istria Peninsula, you see it on this first figure in the Northern Adriatic, thermal nets of small height called the listarice with Sola vulgaris as main target are the main thermal nets used in winter. It's typically used in November, December, and January. Numerous studies, besides confirming the great catchability of those thermal nets, also pointed out the low selectiveness resulting from that specific construction and operation properties. You can see it here, those 3 layers. And although artisanal fisheries are generally perceived as highly efficient, low-impact fisheries that generate few discard, the fishery affect numerous species due to continuous substantial fishermen practice. You will see also on the next slides that we usually catch in these thermal nets 20 species or more, despite having preferred target species as here, Sola vulgaris. So important part of the catch are multi-species catch. Legislative changes of Croatian artisanal fishing regulation have mostly been aimed at thermal nets and encompasses the increase in minimum inner layer mesh size of thermal nets from 28 to 40 in 1999. And we also excluded the thermal nets from subsistence artisanal small-scale fisheries. Additionally, in 2002, for artisanal subsistence fishing, legal provision proclaimed a daily limit of 5 kilos and reduced the load quantity of most types of gill nets. So with these pilot studies, we want to make a step forward to see what we will catch in those thermal nets if we have a greater or larger mesh size. So here you can see the results from the 40 millimeters thermal net. As you can see, a total of 9 different species, 1 crab species and 1 cephalopoda and 1 bivalve species were caught. Target species is of course Sola vulgaris. You can see that in a term of the abundance, we catch 92.6% and in time of biomass, in a term of biomass, 91.4. In a total, we catch 47.1 kilogram of Sola vulgaris. Next slide, please. In the bigger, larger mesh size of 42 millimeters, we catch 17 species, 1 crab species and 1 cephalopoda. Although the catch of Sola vulgaris was slightly lower, it's 92.1 in terms of abundance and 90.3 in terms of biomass. We catch more. In a total, we catch more Sola vulgaris. It was around 52 kilos. Next slide, please. However, when you run selectivity analysis, we see that in fact more individuals were caught on the list of minimum mesh size 40 millimeters, but biological characteristics, so longer and heavier individuals were caught when listed of 42 millimeters were applied. Next slide, please. So As a conclusion, target species Solea vulgaris was represented both as a dominant species in a term of abundance and biomass in both mesh sizes. However, this higher proportion of individuals by number and biomass in the smaller mesh size is expected, while all other indicators are more on the side of the larger minimum mesh size. Catch analysis indicates that by increasing the minimum mesh size of the Listara tremor nets from 40 to 42 millimeters, small scale fishers will catch 3% longer individuals and 11% more in total biomass. And it is therefore valid and justified to consider changing the legislation in terms of increasing the minimum mesh size from 40 to 42 millimeters. So that's it. Later we will have some time for questions. Now I will ask Dr. Zdravko Ikica to also present the presentation about pilot study conducted in Montenegro. It's about testing innovative tremor nets specifically designed for the Karamot prawn, Melicertus keraturus. Zdravko, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I seem to be having with my internet. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, me too. I hear you.
Okay, excellent. I'm on. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I will be giving a brief presentation on the results of the pilot action on testing tremor nets designed for catching the Karamot prawn, Peneus keraturus. On the photos here, you can see what this species of prawn actually looks like. The nets themselves and an example of bycatch caught using these nets. If I could have the next slide, please. So the pilot action was conducted on 3 locations. One was in the Boka Kotorska Bay, specifically the Tilat Bay area. And the other 2 locations were around the mouth or the estuary of the Bojana River on the south of Montenegro, very close to the border with Albania. These locations were chosen because the area around the Bojana River estuary is where this species was traditionally caught. And several years ago, the species peaked inside the Boka Kotorska Bay, and the fisher who was involved with the pilot action was one of the first who reported increased catches of this species. Next slide, please. So these are the names of the 3 fishers who were involved with the pilot action. On the photos beside, you can see the tremor nets obtained through the ARIEL project and an example of measuring the in situ measuring of the Karamot prawn and the bycatch. Next slide, please. So, why this specific pilot action? During the innovation brokering event, it was brought again to our attention that the legal minimum mesh size for the tremor nets in Montenegro is set to 56 millimeters of the open mesh. It is too large for catching of this species. Traditionally, during the past, the fishers used mesh size of around 40 millimeters to catch Karamot prawn, which is now, of course, as I said, illegal. This species is generally caught in a period between the 20th of April and the 20th of June. It appears that this is the time where when the species migrates to the shallower waters and is available to be caught by the tremor nets. species, Caramel reaches high values on the fish market, going as far as maybe 30-35 € per kilo. And they grow fairly large, as most of you probably know. They can get to 20 individuals per kilo or even less. So it is the fisheries consider this species extremely important. What we did for the final actions is to construct 6 travel nets, 2 per fisher. If we could go to the previous slide, I'm not finished with it yet. Thank you. Thank you. So we constructed 2 sets of nets, 2 of each, 40mm mesh size and 44mm mesh size. We decided on just plain design without any net add-ons like the Alceta Dario mentioned in the sepia cuttlefish nets they tested. We monitored shrimp catches and the analysis of bycatch. This analysis showed that both the catch of the caramel drone and the bycatch falls within the legal regulations. So no undersized fish, no juvenile fish, individuals were caught, and the caramel drone was caught in the I'm sorry, I'm getting messages that you cannot hear me. So how are we doing?
Thank you, Zdravko.
I'm not actually finished with the presentation. I'm getting messages that you cannot hear me, that the connection is bad. So
the connection is pretty bad. I have to say that partially I heard you very well and then nothing. So.
But do you want me to continue with the presentation?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. We wanted that you finish.
Okay, I'm just going to wrap it up really quickly. So the next slide, please. On the chart given on this slide, you can see the comparison of the catches between the 48mm experimental net, which is given in orange, and the 44mm mesh size net, which is given in blue. The red line represents the minimum legal size for caramel prawn in Montenegro. So as you can see, more than 95% of the entire catch recorded during the pilot action is well above the legal limit. In accordance to this, we have drafted a very rough draft outline, which was sent to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, with a recommendation that trammel nets could be allowed in Montenegrin commercial fisheries, possibly in a limited fashion and under strict scientific monitoring for the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions?
Zdravko, no, thank you. If you prefer, we can start with questions now, or I get info that Luca Vecchione, Luca, I hope that I spell your surname correctly, is now with us. So maybe we can do that presentation, and after that we can have questions for all our 4 presentations. What do you think? If Luca is here, Luca is here, okay. Then,
yes, okay.
Okay, Luca. Luca will present evaluation of the rainbow LED light network used by Tyrrhenian sea fishing fleet to minimize bycatch. Luca, the floor is yours.
So, good morning to all. So we are here to present our result on testing LED light indicators in the marine protected area of Capogallo, Isola delle Femmine in Sicily. Next, please. So, as we know, the marine protected areas play a major role in the maintenance of biodiversity, and artisanal fisheries are the only activities that can exploit the resource in it. as we can, the trommel nets are defined as common fishing method related that can be used inside the marine protected areas, and usually are defined as selective fishing tool. However, these fishing gear generally capture benthic individuals who have no commercial interest, but which have a very high relevance in the marine ecosystem. Next. So recently, a various number of technical devices have been tested in order to reduce the bycatch, among which the use of LED lights. Usually, these bycatch reducing devices were employed with gill nets in order to prevent the accidental catch of protected species, such as, for example, caretta caretta. So the aim of this project pilot was to test LED light intermittent indicators mounted directly on trommel net in order to assess the reduction of captured unwanted species within the MPA of Capogallo, Isola delle Femmine. Next. The experiment was carried out in July, and overall 3 fishing trials were conducted on board of a fishing vessel employing standard trommel net in cooperation with the fishing fleet of Isola delle Femmine. Next, please. The single catch was performed using a standard trommel net with a length of 1,000 meters divided into 8 pieces of 125 meters, alternating control to single color LED light for 4 different colored luminous indicators. So we had blue, green, red, and white LEDs. In each patch, in this slide, unfortunately, we cannot see the net, but in each patch equipped with LEDs, the luminous indicators were set to a distance of each other of 11 meters, and the trommel net had an inner panel with a mesh of 31.25 millimeters side and 2 outer panels with a mesh of 125 millimeters per side. We attached directly the LED lights using iron wire and paper tape. Next, please. Fishing nets were placed inside the MPA at a depth ranging from 30 to 50 meters and were placed on the bottom around 11 a.m. and were set sail at 6 a.m. roughly on the following day. And once hoisted on board, all caught organisms were untangled and labeled. Next, please. Next, okay. So subsequently, organisms were refrigerated, transported to our laboratory for the identification of the species, and of course, for each specimen, we take the biometric data. The information detected was used to create an array of density and biomass of all captured species. We made 2 different statistical analyses. An ANOVA, testing as null hypothesis the absence of significant difference among the capture of commercial, discarded, or bycatch organisms among the patches of the net with and without LED lights. And then we made also a PCOA performed based on previously transformed data and reassembled through the Braicartis similarity. Next, please. Overall, 183 specimens were caught from 3 different fishing owls, including 36 species, with a total weight of 18.7 kilograms. And as we can see from the pie chart, the 55% of the total catch was captured using the control patches, so the patch without any LED lights. Next, please. The ANOVA did not highlight significant difference among different patches with color LED lights and the control. And the PCOA analysis showed that the catches were quite different from each other in terms of captured assemblage, with the exception of the control and the wide LED patches. Next, please. So, considering that the statistical analysis showed a non-significant variation among the capture of unwanted organisms using different intermittent LED lights, in the frame of this preliminary experimental work, we avoid to make any conclusion on the efficacy of these bycatch reducing devices. However, this is the first study to attempt on demonstrating the efficacy of this bycatch reducing devices on small-scale fishery with the trumbull net in the Mediterranean Sea. We clearly plan another set of trial for using these LED lights, but due to this pandemic, we were not able to perform it. So let's hope that we can do it soon. Next, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. So we finished with those presentation in these two groups. We have maybe 2 or 3 minutes for questions if somebody has something to ask.
I have something to ask.
Okay, Alkistis.
Yes?
Yes, you can ask, please.
All right. I would like to ask if any of the fishermen would like to use these trammel nets that they prove to be very efficient in reducing the bycatch. Do you have any information from the fishermen if they want to use it, this added part of the net? That's the question.
Yes. Exactly, we got from the fishermen on our brokering events, we got an idea about that. So our fishermen in Northern Adriatic already use 42 millimeters for Listara, although by legislative it's allowed to have a smaller mesh size of 40. And also on the trammel nets intended to catch Sepia officinalis, they also by themselves made those parts of thicker net at the bottom of the trammel nets to have a smaller bycatch of benthic organisms. So yes, most of them already use it in the daily practice.
That's very interesting because then this work that we are doing, it means something to the fishermen. So
yes,
yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Any other question? If not, I think that we can go on the next group of presentation. It's about marketing and diversification of small-scale fisheries. And the first presentation is of Dr. Angelos Leontakis about fishing tourism business plan. It's a case study in Astakos in Greece. Angelos, the floor is yours.
Okay, hi all. Yes, so go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I will present you the pilot study that took place in the region of West Greece, and it regards fishing tourism as a means of income diversification. So the study implemented in 2 steps. In the first step, we create an indicative business plan, which is a business plan for a typical case. In fact, the typical case is a family fishing business that own an average size vessel and is located in a traditional harbor. In our case, we use the area of Astakos. In the second step, we adjust the parameters of the business plan so as to investigate the effect of the fishing tourism diversification for 4 different fishers, individual fishers. Next, please. So in the first step, as I say, it is located in the Astakos harbor. Next, please. As I say, it's a family business that owns vessels of 8 meters. The family needs some additional income, but also they want to keep their profile as fishermen. And they also want to decrease their risk and to capitalize the existing network they have with other professions in the local community. And finally, to lower the fishing pressures on the resources. Next, please. So after all, the mission is to reveal the culture and the traditional life of small-scale fishers in the area and to diminish fishing effort. so as to respect the environment and natural resources. The objective of the business plan is the gradual diminishing by 50% of the fishing effort and to mitigate the environmental effects, especially landings. As you can see in the table, it is the initial cost, the initial capital cost, but we have to mention here that this cost can differentiate from user to user, from case to case, based on the existing equipment, based on the size of the vessel, and on the renovation that the vessel needs to implement the fishing tourism activity. Next, please. In this slide, you would see the services that the typical case offered, which is a short trip, a long trip, and there is also another trip which is called a tailor-made trip upon demand. Next, please. So here we have the economic outcomes. As you can see in the top left graph, in the beginning, the income of the family was based in the fishing activity. But after the 5th year of implementation, fishing tourism has gained priority. So you can see that the family now earn more money from the fishing tourism. And also, as you can see in the right, in the bottom right graph, the family fishing income start with a small decrease in the first year of implementation, but then it increases highly after the 5th year of implementation of the business plan. Next, please. And here are the results of the second step. So, as we say, we adjust the parameters of the business plan to 4 different features. If you focus in the last, in the family fishing income of the fisher enterprises, you can see that in each case we have a significant increase. And if we go to the next slide, we can see again that this is also the case for the other 2 enterprises. So in each case, we have an important income diversification and the income increase from the fishing tourism activity. Next, please. I forget to mention before that we also that the businesses deteriorated landings, so they mitigate the environmental effect of fishing by 50%. So based on this pilot study, we have presented different aspects of the fishing tourism activity in 2 different conferences with 3 presentations, one in the LabMAF Symposium and 2 in the Akudit conference. And next, please. Also, we present our results in a 7-page paper in a national magazine with fisheries-related concepts. Next, please. This is the last one. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Angelos. Okay. If Luca is here with us, Luca Bolonini.
Yes.
Then we can proceed with the presentation about FIRMA, a virtual marketplace for improving small-scale fisheries access to the market. So, Luca, you can start.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Okay, can we see the presentation? Okay, I briefly just present another pilot action. The VIRMA is a virtual marketplace in order to improve the small-scale fishery access to the market. Next, please. Until now, there is no a universal agreement about the definition of small-scale fishery. For now, small-scale fishery is the vessel with an overall length minus 10, 12 meters and not using tower gear. Next, please. And several initiatives are in place for the small-scale fishery sector, starting in the last decades. And in particular now, the plan of action are in place. Next, please. And the magnitude of the small-scale fishery in Mediterranean is very important because it means more than 80% of the total fleet and 60% of the onboard jobs, and also 26% of the total estimated annual revenue. Next, please. And in the Italian, where the testing are made, the small-scale fishery represents 60% of the Italian fishing vessels, and also the half of the total fisher are involved in small-scale fishery sector, and also 16% of the national landings are from the small-scale fishery sectors. Next, please. But now, small-scale fishery are facing with several issues, such as the well-known issues such as climate change, the bad situation of overfishing and overexploitation of the fishing resource, an increasing the presence of the alien species, and also the competition with other sectors. Next, please. But the sector is also more complex sector. This is a work made in the ARIEL working group just to understand the target species, the gear adopter, the seasonality in different areas. So we can see how the complexity of the sector is in place. Next, please. And during the ARIEL project, we met fishermen and asked what are the main issues, and the bullet point below is the main answers. So the first is the competition, and the competition, intra-specific competition, that means the price deflation, and also the absence of infrastructure, such as infrastructure for logistic activity or market activity. And also the absence of a cooperation for marketing, the lack of an effective strategy for seafood product value development, and due to the fact that the enterprises are very little or micro enterprises, there is an absence of the enterprise structure and organization. And also the sector suffer with the competition with other assets such as trawling, and very often there is a situation of monopolistic market. Next, please. So at this point, the value chain is the very important things, because value chain refer to the product or service from conception to the different phase until the delivery and the final consumer for the final disposal. Next, please. But the very important concept about the value chain is that the value chain do not incentivize the overexploitation, and the first lack of the value chain is the lack of transparency. So the certification will be the first mechanism to improve the transparency of the sectors. Next, please. So we are inspired. I'm inspired with the Abalobi initiative. Essentially, the motto of the Abalobi is that we needed to choose to eat the right kind of fish, caught by the right kind of fisher. So we need to disrupt the value chain through the direct access to the stored and traceable seafood. Next, please. So the concept behind Virma is a virtual marketplace working in the smartphone, smart device, with the objective to give the possibility to access to the market and new markets, improve the traceability and the quality of the seafood product. And so it means add the value to the seafood product, increase the consumer awareness, and promote also co-management activity and initiative, and support the sustainable fisheries. So the main actors that will be involved are fishermen, restaurant, consumer association, research center, institution, and also private buyer. Next, please. So the key point behind VIRMA is essentially minimize the supply chain for the small-scale fishery sector. It means to direct sale to the restaurant or consumer that allow to earn more money, and also enhance the value of products, because another motto of the ABLOB is the traceability from hook to cook, and increase and promote the small-scale fishery low-impact activity. We know that artisanal fishery is essentially seasonal and made by high selectivity gears, and also boost a more sustainable exploitation of the sea. It means proportioning catches according on demand. Next, please. So this is how VIRMA works. This is a screenshot from the smartphone. From the fisherman side, on the left, you can see the login page. The fisherman had information such as the boat, the code, the harbor, etc. On the central screenshot, you can see a pre-shared list of species in order to facilitate the added species during the fishing activity. And in the right screenshot, you can see the fisherman select a species, insert a quantity and a price. And also we ask to make an exercise for the prices. We can speak about it later. Next, please. And this is from the buyer side. The buyer can have a real-time situation about the catch of the day, listed by species, boat, harbor, whatever they want. So they can place the order in an easy way, just to push a button. And we don't develop any wallet during this stage because it's too hard. But the buyer can place an order and then facilitate the exchange of information between fishermen and buyers. Next, please. So in conclusion, we can see that information and communication technology can effectively contribute to support the value chain of the small-scale fishery sector, because essentially the small-scale fishery sector is an artisanal sector, and there is a huge margin to introduce technology inside these sectors. And also we start to listen very important keywords such as labeling, traceability, e-commerce, seafood transformation, seafood delivery. So there are a great variety and opportunities for this sector. And of course, we need to learn from the lesson made by the COVID-19 outbreak, because small-scale fishery need to be ready for such an unexpected event. And of course, when we speak about the sustainability, we must take into account the environmental, the economic, and the societal sustainability altogether. And that's it. Next, please, the last. Thank you in advance. I think there is time for question.
Yes, there is time for a question. So thank you for both very nice presentation and very interesting, offering some new spaces and new possibilities for small-scale fishermen for marketing and diversification of their products and their activities. Any question?
Yes, I have a question, Sanja. Do you hear me?
Yes, Eric, please.
Okay. Yes, I want to go back for a moment to the part where you had the recommendations were made, let's say, for changing the mesh size of trammel nets for catching prawns, etc. How realistic is it to expect that eventually these recommendations will end up in some form of legislation?
Zdravko, do you want to answer? Zdravko is not here. I can answer for our part. You asked me, is there a possibility that really those larger mesh sites become those that are
yes, that
confirmed by our legislation?
In case of the presentation of Zdravko, where it was, let's say, a paper was sent to the ministry as an advice to maybe increase the mesh size. In
our case, it's very realistic, because we are a part of those groups working on new legislation and measures. So we already give them a recommendation about changing the mesh size for Listara, for tremallet intended for catch sola to be 42 instead of 40. So I think that in the near future we will put it in the force.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add.
Yes, Zdravko, yes.
In case of Montenegro, it's not actually the increase of the mesh size that was recommended, but the decrease, which is, I think, a somewhat more problematic issue, because we are recommending for this kind of fisheries the mesh size to be reduced from 56, which is a minimum now, to 44 or 48, which is the mesh size that was tested in the pilot action.
Sorry, Zdravko, I didn't hear everything you said. Maybe Eric understands.
No, I didn't hear much either. Sorry.
Zdravko, can you repeat, or can you try again to say?
So in the case of Montenegro, we are not asking for a reduction in mesh size, for an increase in mesh size. We are asking for a reduction instead, from 56, which is now the legal minimum, to 44 or 48 as a derogation for this specific type of fisheries, which is a bit more trickier than an increase in mesh size. We hope it will be, we'll be able to realize it, but it is now in the hands of the ministry, of course. Okay. Perhaps Milica, if could shed more light on that, but it is a legal process now.
Yes, we understand. It's more realistic than the increasing of mesh size will be allowed than the, the reduction.
Exactly.
Can I also ask something?
Yes, Alkistis, please.
Thank you. The only thing I want to ask is if the different EU legislation permits this kind of reductions or increase in the size mesh. Let's say, what is the difference, and if this difference, how to say, if it can be common to everybody? That's because from country to country, I can understand that they can get different legislation or increase, etc. But does this comply with the EU regulations? That's the question. If you have checked it out, I mean, thank you.
In our case, yes, it's common. It's tremalets are just used by fishermen in the northern Adriatic, and they all agree about increasing the mesh size. And regarding EU, you have to be just more restrictive than that is stated in a Mediterranean regulation. So there is no problem if each member country wants to have more restrictive rules.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you.
I have a question too.
Okay.
Thank you for the speakers of this first block. The question is, do you think that the results we achieved during the pilot testing contributed to increase the trust of fishermen in institutions and research organizations? I can't hear you, Sania.
Sorry, I muted myself. If we talk about fishermen for the Northern Adriatic, exactly those that were included in our pilot studies, they really believe us, they work with us, and I have to say that we have a really good cooperation. Unfortunately, of course, there is no situation along the coast from the north to the south, usually. Or I think that people from Mediterranean countries knows that usually when you are going to the south, the situation is changing, and the people are working more alone and don't believe in such things. So, but we are working on it. We already have now participates and inclusion of fishermen from the south to our groups working on the new measures and of sustainable fisheries about small-scale fisheries. So, yes, I believe that all this initiative will how to say, I miss the word. They will have a more belief and more, I don't know, help me, Francesca.
Trust, just trust.
More trust, yes, more trust to work with us.
Thank you. That was one of our expected results of our project.
Maybe I can also add something on that?
Yes, Alkistis.
What I wanted to say is because we are a local policy, local administration, we are actually having a very good contact with the fishermen, and they trust us and they want to exploit things, etc. What they don't trust very much is the central government, not because they are not doing the right things, but because it takes a very long time and a lot of bureaucracy, because sometimes there is a good practice or a good suggestion, etc., but then it takes many years before this can be legislated due to things that they are not, let's say, in our case, we cannot do something about it, but it is due to bureaucracy. And I think this is something that we somehow need to enforce, let's say, like that all these things that they are close to the fishermen and all the ideas that they have or they want to pass and then get into legislation, that this needs to have an effect closer, let's say, in time, with less bureaucracy. Because otherwise, if you, for example, we have this opportunity to suggest something as a change, and then this will happen in 7 or 10 years from now, then the effect is less. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Generally, I can agree with everything that you said, Alkistis. The same is here, and probably the same is in the whole Europe. Bureaucracy is a really big problem. I think that maybe when you are talking about small-scale fishermen, they have less problem with that bureaucracy, but in a term of aquaculture operators, they need a fast answer if they want to make something, to build something or whatever. They really have a problem with slow bureaucracy and with the speed of answer from the government. In our case, the situation is pretty better, but maybe it's just my opinion. Anybody else wants to comment? If not, then we will finish with this group of presentation, and we have in the first session one more. It's about exactly about aquaculture and testing innovative aquaculture application. And the first presentation is again Zdravko. It's about experimental farming of the sea sponge Aplyzina aerophoba. So Zdravko, I hope that now we will have more luck with listening you.
Let's try it this time. even though, if I can say so, it would be much better if we had problems with internet connection regarding this pilot action, but we'll see what we can do. So the experimental farming of Plesina aerophoba, a species of porifer species, species of sea sponge that is very particular in that it's very bright yellow in color, as you can see in the two left images on this slide. But as soon as it is exposed to air, even for a very, very brief while, it starts to die and becomes dark blue or black in color. If I could have the next slide. So the pilot action was conducted on two locations. One is the experimental mussel farm, which is located just in front of the Institute of Marine Biology, and with a local entrepreneur in marine aquaculture in the locality of Utah, which is part of the Kotor municipality. You can see the locations marked on the map. I don't know if you can, if I move a bit, if you can see the experimental fish farm in the background behind me. This is the institute building. Next slide, please. So again, the names of the operators. Mr. Luka Milosevic is the entrepreneur who was engaged for this pilot action. Next slide, please. The idea behind this pilot action was certain compounds in sea sponges are known for their cytotoxic, antimicrobial, anti-cancer potential. These substances are commercially available and reach an extremely high prices, about as much as 500 euro per milligram of such a substance. So it is interesting it would be interesting to be able to farm such organisms in order to extract those. Also, primarily because it stops the reliance on the natural populations of such species. Plesina aerophoba is a protected species, by the way. So the idea was to construct a system of weights and ropes and buoys to which the fingers of Plesina aerophoba, which you can see on the topmost picture, which shows specimen of the sponge suffering from a certain disease. That explains the red coloration. So the idea was to take these fingers of Plesina aerophoba, attach them to a rope, which is moored by a weight to the sea bottom, and the rope is kept taut by a buoy on the surface. The scuba divers would then, at a given intervals, dive and measure the growth of the sponge attached to the ropes. Unfortunately, we decided to perform, well, not decided, we were finally able to commence with the experiment in the winter time. Boka Kotorska Bay is very particular in that it has a huge inflow of fresh water in wintertime. So the salinity can go as low as 0 at surface level, and as the depth of the bay is not too great, the salinity of the entire column is drastically reduced. So our experimental Plesina aerophoba did not survive. We did not even begin to record the potential growth because of the quickness of their demise. So the negative, we think this is due to the low salinity and low temperature. as well as the increased turbidity due to rainfall. The sea bottom in the bay is mostly covered with mud and silt, so with turbulence in the water, the water becomes partially non-transparent. There were previous attempts at this, and they got positive results, but these experiments were conducted during warmer months of the year, so that's why we assume this was the main problem. If I could have the next slide, I think it's the last one. Yes. So thank you for your attention again.
Thank you, Zdravko. And as you said, now it was perfect.
Of course.
Okay, our next presentation is again from Croatia. Igor Taljancic will present us again using Pinger, but now aimed at reducing the impact of gillhead sea bream Sparus aurata on our mussel farming. Igor, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. Okay, so our pilot study was acoustic pingers in pilot studies. Next slide, please. Mussel predation by gillhead sea bream has become a significant challenge to mussel growers in Mediterranean, causing extensive financial losses. This is particularly true for Croatia because in the last few years an increasement in the population number along the East Adriatic Sea has been noted, mainly because of the one of the reasons was due to increased temperature that has its influence on the reproductive biology of the species and hence its spawning, but also due to scenario of escape events that occur during the last 20 years that contributed to the local marine population, as well as to further effect of tuna farm that introduces enriched food that also facilitates a higher spawning in gillhead sea bream. Due to high population increasement, a high fish damage on mussel stocks caught on long lines has been noted, and it resulted in Croatian mussel population decreasement. Example from 3,000 tons to only 920 tons. This has a huge impact on Croatian shellfish industry because most of the industry is based on small businesses that is owned by families. So it resulted in a lot of closure of family businesses that deals with shellfish growing, particularly in Malistone Bay and Lim Bay. And as an example, you can see the impact of gillhead sea bream predation on mussel robes, where after only a few hours of introduction of robes in the sea, it was noted that let's say gillhead sea bream smelled the new mussels and they predated it. There were some attempts in order to mitigate the predation rates, and one of those was anti-predator bags, but they have the issue because they produce a lot of biofouling mass that reduces lateral water transport and therefore has a negative impact on the mussel growth. Next slide, please. And the idea was to use some non-destructor means to mitigate the predation rates of gillhead sea bream. And one of those was the application for underwater dolphin devices, because it can emit sound frequencies between 5 to 500 kilohertz with a peak around 140 kilohertz. And it was known that sound frequencies can discourage gillhead sea breams to eat the mussels on the farms. The pilot area, Lim Bay, was chosen as a pilot area, and the pilot study was done in 2 locations. In total, 200 newly seeded and already formed long lines have been deployed at 2 farm concession areas with variable shot length from 35 to 55 millimeters. And underwater acoustic devices will be and activated in 2 periods, in May and in July, in order to study the effect of temperature on the predation rates of the gillhead sea bream. Next slide, please. And within the first month, only 5% of mussels were predated, but as soon as the temperature reached about 24 Celsius degrees, all some produced long lines suffered from intense predation, ending with only about 20% of the stocked mussels. So some protection was functional only for the 2 weeks, but when temperature reached about 22 degrees, the intense predation was absorbed as in previous case. So we can say that the application of underwater dolphin devices at mussel farms show to be non-functional agents for fish predation. So it was concluded that further studies related with predation prevention should be oriented toward testing sounds with lower frequencies, spectra in respect to gillhead sea bream behavior. Next slide, please. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Igor. It was very interesting. At the beginning, when we started with this pilot study, I was hoping it will be promising as a solution, but at the end, the results are as you said. I got the info that Alkistis has a question for you. Alkistis.
Okay.
Yes, the question actually is for Zdravko.
For Zdravko, sorry.
Sorry. And it has to do with, let's say, the sponge presentation. A question was if the sponge exists in the area, let's say where the test took part, and if they are affected with the low or higher salinity, let's say like the natural population, if they do exist. That's one part of the question. And the other is, could it be used, the technology of mussel farming, where they have buoys and they have also a weight and let's say, if we would like to do this commercially, in case we manage to grow them, of course, then this would, to apply existing technology like the mussel technology in order to have it, let's say, in a bigger scale. That's the 2 things that I wanted to ask.
Yes, so the species is found in the area naturally, but not, I think not in the, it is found in the bay, just not in the locations where we tested, where we pilot tested. Because, so I know, for example, that my scuba diver colleagues have told me that it's present in the Verige Strait, which connects the inner to the outer part of the Boka Kotorska Bay. But that area is somewhat deeper. So probably those populations that live on the sea bottom down there are more protected from the changes in temperature and salinity. As far as the technology for this farming, it's I think I'm not an expert in sea sponges, but the technology what we what we used, which is based on a protocol by a professor from the university in Germany, and the name escapes me at the moment. But it's so simple that it can be replicated with anything. You just need some kind of weight, a buoy, and a piece of rope. And a sponge, of course. Without the sponge, it won't work.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, we can finish with our last presentation. Mairi is with us. Mairi Manipoulou will tell us about installation of aqua underwater cameras to increase the efficiency of feeding procedures. So Mary, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well. So I will present you a pilot study that we had in the area where we had the research in near Mesologi. The area is named Neochori. I will make the presentation on behalf of the company that actually applied the pilot action. The name of the company is SAO. You can see on the first slide the name right down. There's a picture of the logo of the company. So I don't know if I cannot see the presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, you can see it. I cannot see it though, so that you can change the. So we utilized underwater digital cameras in aquaculture cages during feeding. I cannot see the presentation, so I cannot ask you to change the slides. The second slide, please. Do you see it?
Yes, we can see the second slide.
Okay. So what are we going to see today? We will make an introduction of the pilot action, the purpose of the experiment, the materials and methods used, and the results of this pilot action. So as I already said, the location is Neochori in Western Greece, and the period that the pilot action was applied was in total duration of 7 months. As you can see, it started on October 2019, the first part of the pilot action until January 22. And the second part was from May 2020 until September 2020 for 4 months. And the fish species that was examined was sea bream. Next slide, please. Here is the name of the company that applied the pilot action. It's SAO Aquaculture. What was the idea? They first applied the pilot action in the first period. They would like as they were feeding the fish with the utilization of the cameras, they could see the feed quantity that the fish were fed, and from the cameras they could decide when to stop feeding when the food was going down to the fish cage. The idea was to minimize the feed loss. They did the pilot action by having 2 cages. They had the control cage where they applied the business as usual model. They continued feeding the fish without the camera, and another cage where they used the camera. So they were stopping the feed. The idea was to stop the feed when the food started to go down to the cage. However, during this first pilot study, they realized that the fish species that they have decided to apply the pilot action, the sea bream, is a fish that eats everything. So all the food that was given to them, they were being eaten, and they realized that they couldn't stop feeding by monitoring the food, because the species was eating everything. What they realized, though, was that there were particles in the cage that they were blurring the water. So they realized that, first of all, the sea bream eats everything, and second of all, they stopped feeding the fish when the particles were becoming more and more. This was the criteria to control feeding. So they also, the first pilot action was applied during winter, as you saw. So they decided to repeat the test, the action during summer. So to have better results and to monitor in a better way, not the food at the next pilot action, but actually the particles that were being on the water, and they were blurring the water. Next slide. So what we can see is that feeding is a really important factor in aquaculture. So these cameras would help control feeding and take into consideration that fishes grow in relation to the food quality that they are being fed, the food consumption that they have, and the feeding strategy that the company follows. Another important factor is convertibility, which is the ratio between food consumption and biomass. They use this code of EFCR that we will see later on also. So concluding, the cost of feeding is really important for an aquaculture company, as it is estimated up to from 60 to 65% of the total cost that they have for feeding the fish. So it's really, really important to limit food waste. So what we would like to see with this pilot action, what is the economic loss coming from possible food loss during feeding? So they use this camera to observe the behavior of the fish, the mobility as an index of health and welfare of the fish, the cleanliness of the cage nets as an additional well-being factor that influence the nutrition and development rate. The aim was to reduce the food waste and to calculate the subsequent cost reduction of feed and production expenses. These are some technical details. What is the equipment that was used by the Aqua group who provided us the innovative camera? So it was an underwater digital dual camera with a remote control. On the surface, we had a stable camera. They had a stable camera, battery for powering cameras, and a solar panel for charging purposes, antennas for transmitting the image signal to the terminal, and a camera control and recording software installed to the terminal. This is the equipment. In the next slide, we can see also pictures of the equipment, where we have the underwater surface camera installed on the fish cage, along with the battery, the solar panel, the antenna, and the underwater camera is installed at a depth of 6 meters in order to provide the best possible image of the population eating and also being able to see the food waste or the particles in our case. This is the next slide is a picture of from the cameras that they had at the company while they were doing the experiment. We can see the second antenna that was installed externally as a receiver of the image of the camera that was in the cage. And also the camera that was provided, the software that was provided allowed to control the camera and the video that was being taken in the cage. So as we said before, the idea was to see what was the economic loss coming from the possible food loss during feeding. So when that happened, the second pilot action was between May and September for a period of 4 months. The fish species was sea bream, and we had again 2 cages, a control cage, where is the business as usual cage without camera, and the camera cage, and they gave 2 names, E15 for the first and E13 for the second. So what is important to see here is that the two cages had similarities, that they started the pilot action by having similar conditions. They calculated the fish population. It was from the same batch. The size covariation and fast growth rate was similar. The location was similar. The one cage was next to the other. The average temperature the same. The nets were the same, the cage perimeter the same, and the type of feed that they consumed the same employee that was monitoring the pilot action and was feeding the cages, and also the quality and the origin of the food. So we had the two cameras. In the one camera, we didn't, in the two cages, in the one cage, the control cage, we didn't have a camera. On the other cage that we did have the camera, the E13, they were monitoring and recording the entire feeding process. They were watching the process from the computer, focusing on food waste and observing at the same time the behavior of the fish. The feeding was interrupted when the fecal volume, the particles, as I already said, would increase significantly within the cage without waiting to detect any food waste, a thing that wasn't been observed in the first experiment, which is really important to notice. And actually, they were thinking that the food would be the indicator, but finally, it was the fecal volume that was the indicator of stopping feeding the fish. What has happened? The fish would be fed by appetite while ensuring zero food loss when fishes reach their feed limits. So an improved convertibility would be attained. It was the ratio that I told you already between food consumption and biomass. The maximization of convertibility index would result in a corresponding reduction in production cost per biomass unit. And comparing this cost with the production cost in the control cage would provide an estimation of profit gains. Here we have some diagrams showing on the left, on the vertical, we can see the food consumption, I think, and on the horizontal, these are the dates. No, on the vertical, we can see the weight, and on the horizontal, we can see the food consumption day by day. So you can see in gray, this is the food consumption of the cage that had the camera, and in orange is the food consumption of the cage that had the business as usual scenario. What is important to see here is that the cage that had the camera was fed more than the cage not having the camera. Average weight. Anyways, I cannot explain very well this diagram. If you have more questions, we can ask the company that had prepared the diagram. The next one, yes, this is really important. It's about the convertibility, because what is really important to the company is that they should feed the best possible quantity to the fish, but they could have the best possible biomass of the fish. So they could have the least cost possible for feeding the fish with the best quality. Here, I'm not also very sure. I think on the next we have the biomass. And on the horizontal, we can see the dates that the fish were fed also. And there is a comparison of the two cages. Let's go to the next slide. Here we can see the operational results on a biological level of the experiment. We can see that with the food that was being fed to the fish, the cage where we had the camera, they increased their average weight in comparison with the fish that did not have the camera. The weight, the average weight, the biomass, and the tons of food consumed are more in the cage with the camera than the cage without the camera. But what is important is that the convertibility rate is lower than the convertibility rate on the cage without the camera. So we can see that finally with the experiment, they had a successful outcome, which means that they were satisfied that they controlled the food that was being fed, the fish that was being fed. It was in a lower, they had a better result in biomass in relation to the food that has been, to the expense that they had for the consumption of the food. Concerning the operation results in costs, in the level of cost, how much money they have spent, we can see that on the cage with the camera, we have a bigger turnover than with the cage without the camera. And the profit margin is higher to the cage with the camera than the one without the camera. Concerning the quality of the experiment, again, the results are really positive. In the cage in the camera, the fish contained had more fat than the cage without the camera. What is important to keep here in mind is that the fat contained in fish is accepted if it's up to 4% in the fish. So the upper limit does not exceed the 4% of so here we can see that in the cage with the camera, it is up to 2%, let's say, the fat in each fish, which is highly accepted, and this means that the quality is also really important. Another point here is that they noticed that at the cage that they had the camera, the fat stayed stable as they were continued fishing the fish. At the cage that they didn't have the camera, there was a peak point, and then they started to decrease, something that they could not have noticed if they didn't have the camera, which was really important for the quality of the fish. So to sum up, the experiment, although it started with the idea of controlling the food of the fish, it was really innovative finally, because they realized that for a species that was a greedy species, let's say, a greedy fish that could not stop fishing when it was when the food was acceptable, they realized that they could control the consumption by the particles. So this is one innovative, interesting result. The second is that finally they realized by this monitoring that the camera resulted in giving them information of having less cost, better quality of fish in relation to fat, and the biological results was also positive also concerning convertibility. So we could say that by ensuring the maximum food with zero loss, they had an improved conversion rate, which was actually the requested outcome from this experiment. And also they didn't have any negative impacts of this experiment. These cameras would be really important and interesting for an aquaculture company to be provided with. Thank you for your attention. As I already said at the beginning, I was just transmitting the results of the aquaculture company. It was Mr. Vasilis Harisis that prepared the report and the presentation of today. If you have more questions or would like to have more detailed information on the experiment, we could get in contact with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mairi, for presentation. We are a little bit out of time, but since the coffee break is our next activity, I think if somebody have a question for Mairi or some comment. No? If not, I want to thank all presenters and all those that were participated in our small discussion. Thank you. And see you after, I don't know what we agree on, 20 minutes or less?
No, we have a 5-minute break.
5 minutes break. Okay, see you in 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm on. Okay, so welcome back everybody then to the ARIEL final conference. I hope you had a sufficient little coffee break. My name is Erik van Ham. I'm a fish biologist working in the environmental department of the Regional Unit for Carolina, and I have been acting as the ARIEL communication manager for the region of Western Greece in the past 3 years. So, in the second session of the conference, we'll focus on innovation governance and small-scale fisheries and aquaculture policies and technical recommendations. And our first speaker will be Mrs. Francesca Peretta from the Marche region, who has acted as the overall ARIEL project manager. And she will give a presentation about the policy and technical recommendations based upon the outcomes and results of the ARIEL project. Francesca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody. Today, my task is to present in brief the policy and technical recommendation paper, which is one of the final project deliverables. You can share the presentation, please. Can you see the presentation? Not yet.
No, not yet. There we are.
Next, please. So you heard a lot about our project activities, from the approaches to interactive innovation and stakeholder engagement to the pilot actions methodology and results. Now we are in the last stage. The last effort of our project is to transfer the ARIEL results into strategic documents and operational documents too. And we prepared a policy recommendation paper, a joint research agenda, and a memorandum of understanding. Next, please. After this, the project implementation and the interactive cooperation with more than 100 stakeholders from fishery, small-scale fishery and aquaculture sectors, our ambition now is to contribute to a more sustainable and science-based governance by sharing a document, including strategic and operational measures tested within the project. Fabio already told us about the vision, so next, please. We identified 7 key points on which basing our testing policy and technical recommendation, and from data collection to ecosystem-based approach to fishery and improving access to market and adding value. Next, please. You can find some policy recommendation horizontal for the 2 sectors, but we also highlight some specific recommendation from small scale and aquaculture. The first recommendation is about data collection that should be deepened and widened. We need more data on socioeconomic framework analysis, so to have a better understanding of the condition where our key stakeholder operates in Adriatic and Ionian area. We need to put at the center of our activity, all the activities dealing with fishery and aquaculture. We have to put in the middle the fishermen, so to ensure a greater involvement in designing and decision steps. About aquaculture, we claim to have more data on administrative, social, economic, and environmental information, so to effectively put in practice co-management. Next, please. And the second recommendation is about new approaches to innovation and small-scale fishery aquaculture actors' engagement. Is an horizontal issue because our project starts from the idea that stakeholders shall be reached and involved in a systematic way. We tested the role of public innovation brokers of public institutions, so to facilitate it accompany the bottom-up process. We call for the setting up and working of national stakeholder boards, but not only at national level, but also at local level. This is mainly for those representative of a small-scale fishery sector, which tends to be marginalized in the decision-making process. And we also claimed for the adoption of a new approach to innovation, so an interactive one that Alkistis explained in the session 1. And we claim also for policy tools that can facilitate and accompany the innovation discovery process, but also the knowledge exchange, not only at local level, but also at transnational level. Next, please. The third policy recommendation deals with co-management. Once again, you can find the role of small-scale fisheries representative that will be that can be done by setting up these regional stakeholder boards from designing phases of the action plans, the future action plans for small-scale fisheries. And an horizontal issue is to encourage both aquaculture representative and small-scale fishery representative to practice and perform co-management. Research bodies should also promote the practical advantages from the use of advanced tools and models for spatial planning, and to explain how to use it both to institutional target group and socioeconomic operators. Next, please. Policy recommendation number 4 focuses on ecosystem-based approach to fishery. We know that are in place a lot of projects dealing with this issue, and we can mention also the FRC project, which is one project co-financed by Italy-Croatia program that aims to implement by means of an integrated platform the ecosystem approach to fishery in the Adriatic area. However, from ARIEL project, we understood that institutional stakeholders are aware about the opportunity from the application of models and tools as supporting decision-making tools while implementing the ecosystem approach to fisheries or aquaculture. However, a stronger cooperation is needed with scientific bodies, so to put in practice, so to outline the practical advantages from the use of these new tools and models. It is also advisable to set up a roadmap for the application of ecosystem-based approach to fishery and aquaculture, not only at local level, but also across cross-border level. The implementation of the ecosystem-based approach can bring effectively also added value to seafood products, since it can leverage also the awareness on sustainability and socioeconomic feasibility. Next, please. Another key issue of our project is the capitalization and valorization of practical knowledge. Our project is based on, focuses on valorizing the existing and practical knowledge. And so we would like to outline also this point, because we have to find synergies and cross-fertilization opportunities with previous and ongoing initiatives, not only at regional level, but also at cross-border and transnational level. We have to use the stock of knowledge and experience to widening our results, but also our project results, also ensuring the exchange of practices that are that prove successful in day-by-day management of small-scale fishery and aquaculture. So to this, the project promotes the setting up of a permanent dialogue between institutional, technical, and socioeconomic stakeholders. This by acting as a knowledge network, because the intent of ARIEL partnership is going beyond the project lifespan. So to keep cooperating together to find new solutions and to put in practice knowledge. Next, please. We know that capacity building is a cross-cutting issue, both for small-scale and aquaculture sectors. The project calls for the setting up of programs with periodical upgrading of skills and with the aim of building capacity on specific topics, specific but also core topics for these two key sectors of Adriatic Ionian communities. We mentioned some topics such as ecosystem-based approach, spatial management, advanced tools and models for planning and management. We also recognize the relevance of extension services because they can provide enterprises with new organizational and marketing skills and also tools empowering the human capital. Last but not least, next please. Improving access to market and added value. This recommendation arisen from the VIRMA experience, the virtual market experience, and also from fishery, the diversification of income with the fishery-related tourism. We call for education campaign with regard to small-scale fishery, so to valorize the sustainability of this activity, but also the traditional value, the cultural value, and added value to the product, to the seafood product. I miss the screen. Yes, thank you. We also suggest to keep promoting the direct selling of fishery products in a regulated and supported framework, and also to provide the fishermen with services and facilities to foster the direct selling and the promotion opportunity to unlock the potential, their potential to contribute to the valorization of seafood and also sea resources. About aquaculture, we can mention the increased investment in the diversification of products, and to this, governments should promote the creation of network, shortening the value chain, and for both sectors, it could be a good opportunity, the seafood certification, but national governments should support the cost for adhesion to labels on certification schemes. What's next? So the last slide of the presentation, the joint research agenda will accompany somehow the policy and technical recommendation paper, because it's a deliverable in charge of lead partner CNR, and intends to summarize the different tasks, so to try to follow up somehow the studies carried out in the project framework. We heard about pilot activity preliminary results, and we hope to capitalize these activities also in future. The innovation agenda can also serve as strategic and multidisciplinary action plan for innovation and sustainability of these two key sectors on which ARIEL focuses, and the agenda aims to define common priorities and research line, area of improvement, knowledge-based solution and action to address the major changes linked to the small-scale fishing and aquaculture in future, for coming years. Next slide. What's next? ARIEL Innovation Community is waiting for you. You can see on the screen the link to our Blue Innovation Community, which is a virtual place where different stakeholders, multi-actors can meet, exchange ideas, knowledge, and asking to experts about technical questions, but also create a new network and partnership. The ARIEL network itself will go on. Partners signed a memorandum of understanding, committing themselves in try to find solution for capitalizing our project, but also to apply to the policy recommendation paper principles. We are also looking for new opportunities to capitalize a specific action of the project, the most interesting one, and enlarging our partnership network and ensure also a follow-up of the entire ARIEL project approach. For me, that's all. I just take a few seconds to thank you all the colleagues because it was really a good project, and I learned a lot from you, and I hope to cooperate with you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca, for this very interesting and detailed presentation about the findings and the proposals that we're going to make through ARIEL. I am going to give the floor to the next speaker, who's going to be Mr. Orestes Anagnopoulos. He's a consultant at Advanced Planning and Consulting SA in the field of fisheries and aquaculture in Greece, who's going to talk about small-scale fisheries and aquaculture in the upcoming programming period of the European and Maritime Fisheries Fund. Orestes, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Eric, and hello, everyone. Let me see. Okay, I have my presentation. Today, I'll do a quick presentation about aquaculture, small-scale fisheries, and the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund during the next programming period, 2021 to 2027. Okay, thank you for the slide. So the EU discussions about the reform of the basic regulations related to aquaculture and fisheries, about the new programming period started back in 2018. Discussions between the member states showed that it is of common interest to continue common fisheries policy, as also the financing of sustainable aquaculture and fishery sectors. Besides the delays mainly due to COVID-19, it is estimated that during the first months of 2021, the new regulation will be adopted. Next slide, please. So what do we know up to this point? The new EMFF, which will be named for first time EMFF-A by adding the initial letter of the word aquaculture in the title, aims to contribute to the Europe 2020 strategy and to the implementation of common fisheries policy. In a nutshell, the Union priorities that will be supported are, as shown in my slide, the promoting of environmentally sustainable, resource-efficient, innovative, competitive, and knowledge-based fisheries and aquaculture, fostering the implementation of common fisheries policy and integrated maritime policy, the increasing of employment and territorial cohesion, and the fostering of marketing and processing. Next slide. Focusing first in small-scale fisheries, there was a lot of discussion about the subsidies for the fleet, such as the permanent withdrawal of fishing activities, the temporary cessation, acquisition of new or used vessels, the replacement of machinery and equipment, investment in vessels in order to improve health, safety, and working conditions, etc. Member states, apart from including these in their multi-annual plan, they must compose a specific small-scale fisheries action plan for their country. This is the first time that small-scale fisheries as a sector is highlighted in the regulation as a specific part of the fisheries. And this, the action plan that the EU requires from each member state, reveals the importance that European Union wants to give the next programming period to small-scale fisheries fleet. Next slide. More specifically, according to the latest version of the regulation documents, the permanent withdrawal of fishing vessels will be included in the EMFFA 2021-2027. EMFFA, however, this time will support the permanent withdrawal only under specific conditions and not to whomever and whenever wants to do it. It will support the permanent withdrawal only in the parts of the fleet where there is no balance between fishing ability and fishing capabilities. Next slide. Moreover, the temporary cessation will also be included in the next programming period. This can be due to conservation conditions, emergency conditions, natural disaster, etc. The support will only be granted if the impact on the fishermen is significant and the maximum duration will be up to 6 months per vessel during the whole period of 2021 to 2027. An example this year of the temporary cessation was due to COVID-19 that was given in many countries. Next slide. Now, as regards the local development programs, which are called CLLD, or if you may remember, leader programs in the previous periods, are also a priority of EMFFA during the next programming period. Europe definitely wants to strengthen the partnerships between local stakeholders so to achieve sustainable local coastal communities. CLLD can include both initiatives and ideas for fisheries, as also for aquaculture topics. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. As regards the grants for investments in SSF vessels, these, as it seems, according to the latest discussions, will include the funding of the first acquisition of a fishing vessel by young fishermen. Young fishermen is addressed to people younger than 40 years old, which have worked in fisheries for 5 years by that time, or they have acquired sufficient professional qualifications. It will also support the funding of the replacement or modernization of a main or auxiliary engine of a vessel. Of course, there will be some requirements about that, such as that the new engine must not have more power in kilowatts than the existing one. Next slide, please. Finally, about fisheries and the control regulation, it should be mentioned that the control regulation will be updated during 2021 as well, and EU will focus on increasing and having better monitoring in the SSF sector. EMFFA, during next programming period, will support the purchase and installation of the equipment necessary for the mandatory monitoring of vessels and electronic reporting systems used for control purposes, mainly in small-scale fisheries, the purchase and installation of the necessary devices for the mandatory electronic remote monitoring systems used to control the implementation of the landing obligation, and the purchase and installation of the devices for the obligatory continuous measurement and recording of the power of the machine. As regards the upcoming control regulation, the update of the control regulation, it should be mentioned that there is already a strong reaction from small-scale fisheries owners about the establishment of GPS tracking devices on their vessels. Next slide, please. Now, as regards the funding in aquaculture sector, there is a big difference this time in comparison with the previous programming period. This time, European Union, instead of listing the specific measures in the regulation documents, EU calls that each member state shall focus on the strategic priorities chosen by each country. This means more freedom for each member state to set its own targets and priorities, but on the other hand, means more local administrative work. Next slide. EMFFA may therefore support the sustainable development of aquaculture, including, of course, marine aquaculture, lagoons, and freshwater, as also plants for the production of food and other raw materials. In particular, support of environmental sustainability, productive investments, innovation, acquisition of professional skills, compensatory measures providing critical land and nature management services will be eligible. Public health actions, aquaculture stock insurance, and animal health, and of course, welfare actions will also be eligible. However, in the case of productive investments, support will be provided through direct grants and financial instruments and through Invest EU, which offer a higher leverage on markets and therefore are more relevant than grants to address the financing challenges of the sector. Next slide. Finally, it should be highlighted that food security remains a top priority for the next programming period. Food security relies on well-organized markets with high transparency, stability, quality, and diversity of the supply chain, and of course, consumer information. For that purpose, EMFFA may support the marketing of fishery and aquaculture products in line with the Common Market Organization objectives. In particular, it will support the creation of producer organizations, the implementation of the so-called production and marketing plans, the promotion of new market outlets, and the development and dissemination of market intelligence. Next slide. So this was a brief illustration of what a European Maritime Fisheries Fund and Aquaculture 2010-127 will look like. And as we wait for the final documents of the regulation, I wish a COVID-free development and sustainable development of the two sectors in the upcoming years. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Orestes, for your presentation. I would say very interesting. A lot of the pilot actions and ideas behind the ARIEL project can already foresee that they would fit well into the new programming period and the ideas that the European Union has put forward. Thank you very much once again. So we'll now move on to the last presentation of this session, which will be given by Mr. Vasilis Kokinos, who's going to present a related project within the Interreg Europe framework, focused on improving policies for the competitiveness of aquaculture small and medium-sized enterprises in various European Union regions. Vasilis, you may start the presentation.
Thank you, Eric, for your introduction, and I would also like to thank the ARIEL project for their kind invitation, and especially Ms. Alkistis Parpoura. Thank you very much. I will give you a brief presentation. It's the last presentation, as you said. I will try to be as brief as possible. And I will present you the Extra SMEs project, which is a project similar to ARIEL project, in the sense that we are also trying to focus on the competitiveness and the extroversion of aquaculture companies. We are not targeting at small-scale fisheries, but as you understand, the topic is more or less the same with ARIEL project. Can we move to the next slide, please? Here's the outline of this presentation. I will give you the topic and challenges when we first drafted the proposal of this project, the goals and the objectives of the project, the partners that participate, overview and some of the main outputs of the Extra SMEs project. Next slide, please. So when we started drafting the proposal for the Extra SMEs project back in the beginning of 2018, in Europe, the aquaculture accounted for about 20% of fish production. It directly employed about 85,000 people, so it is a very powerful sector in Europe. It is mainly composed by small and medium enterprises and is renowned as high-quality sector. The global production since 2000 was growing nearly about 7% each year, and the overall output has been more or less constant in the European Union, so there had to be some actions in order to improve this production. Next slide. Small and medium enterprises in the European Union face international competition from world regions where industry is subject to lower regulatory requirements. This is something that we have spotted in the regional stakeholder meetings here in Greece. Other countries have lower requirements and are at conflict with the heart of the production of EU aquaculture, where the standards are very high. And there is also a need to improve competitiveness, support, and planning throughout the supply chain. Next, please. European Union has identified aquaculture as a key component of both the common fisheries policy and blue growth. Also, the European Union has identified the main priorities that need to be improved in this sector, such as the simplification of administrative procedures, enhancement the competitiveness of the sector, ensure access to space through coordinated spatial planning, and general one more of the main priorities was to increase the capacity. Next slide, please. Apart from the problems at EU level, there are some problems are at a regional level. So challenges faced by SMEs, such as licensing and finding support for innovation and extraversion, are regional in nature. Throughout the project, we have identified some regional problems, such as delays in getting the license for aquaculture units. Regional policies aim to improve the competitiveness of SMEs. And as you understand, work is required at the regional level to resolve spatial planning conflicts. Next, please. So this was the basis when we first started drafting the proposal for this project. And the goals that we try to achieve with this project is to improve implementation of SMEs competitiveness policies across the value chain of coastal and rural economies with a strong aquaculture component, and of course promote simpler and improved administrative processes. Next, please. Here you can see the project objectives to increase the capacity of authorities. One of, as Francesca mentioned, one of the policy recommendations of the ARIEL project is also one of the objectives of the Extra SMEs project, to identify innovation pathways and raise awareness, and have investments to promote entrepreneurship, and also address limited access to finance. Next, please. Here you can see the partners that participate in Extra SMEs project. We have two partners from Greece, the region of Peloponnesus, the lead partner of the project. We also have two partners from Italy. It's an inter-Europe project, so we have partners throughout Europe. We have also partners from Poland, Romania, Finland, Ireland, and Lithuania. There are 9 partners participating from 7 countries of Europe. Next, please. The project started about 2.5 years ago, so it started in June 2018. It is an inter-Europe project. It lasts for 5 years in total. The first 3 years of the project are dedicated to the implementation of that consists of some number of studies, some pilot activities, and the 24 last months of the project are dedicated to monitoring the action plan. The total budget you see is almost 1.8 million euros. Next, please. So here you can see the main outputs. As I said, we have 4 studies that have to do with licensing regulatory frameworks, identifying new products and processes for extraversion potential, perceived economic potential of the sector, and one study is dedicated to finding the main barriers for internationalization for aquaculture SMEs. We have 4 individual workshops. The first one, the adopting simplified administrative procedure, has already been implemented. We are kind of delayed in this activity due to COVID-19. Also, there are 2 study visits forecasted in our project, and 1 EU-wide final conference. And as ARIEL project, we also have some policy briefs, some policy recommendations that are going to be drafted at the end of the project. Next slide, please. So that was all from my side. If you want to have more details for our project, you can see here the project website and the social media, which it would be nice if you try to follow. That's all from my side. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, Vasily, thank you very much. Now, as I had said before, this was the last presentation of this session. We shall now move to the interventions and general discussion part of the conference, which is going to be led by Dr. Celia Vassilopoulou. She's Research Director of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research in Athens, Greece. I would like to thank all my colleagues and all the participants, stakeholders, and so on for their participation so far. And also Mrs. Adela Franja and ARIEL Joint Secretariat and Managing Authorities for their support throughout the project throughout the years. Thank you very much. Celia, I'm handing the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody. I think we're a bit behind schedule, though. So first of all, I would like to thank all the ARIEL presenters because they provided a very nice idea of the outcomes from ARIEL, but also the two invited speakers. Who actually gave us two very relevant presentations, Mr. Anagnopoulos on the next programming period from the EMFA, but also Mr. Kokinos on the need for improving the competitiveness of SMEs, which is also very relevant. So I'm not sure if there are any interventions, first of all, and then we will go to the general discussion, which needs to keep on some crucial, let's say, questions from the participants. So do we have any interventions?
I'm sorry. I'm Alkis speaking, and I want to ask for Olga, let's say, our IT manager, to tell us what we have on that level. Maybe Olga can tell us if there are other people that they want to interfere in for this section. And let us know, because I see from Fabio that there are some people that they want to enter and they haven't been entering. So please, Olga, inform us.
Okay, Alkistis. Anyone who wanted to connect is already connected. We have admitted anyone. I have told the audience to either they want to participate in the general discussion to let us know. So we have nothing more yet. Any questions? If you would like, you can start your general discussion, and if anyone in the audience likes to do, I will inform you.
Okay.
Okay, so my feeling is that we're about an hour behind schedule, Alkistis. What do you think? Should we, if we don't have anything, I mean, we don't have any interventions, I would like to know if there are any points that need to be discussed. And then we can go right ahead with the conclusions and key messages. What do you think?
Celia, if you excuse me.
Sure.
It's not an intervention, it's just a general proposal. Besides being a small contributor in this very big project with so many partnerships, I think ARIEL revealed that SSF and aquaculture is a strong sector that can be innovative, can be very cooperative, and together we can work on some things in the next programming period. So this is kind of an open call for everyone that contributed in ARIEL, that due to the fact that European Union shows the common interest that wants to contribute in strengthening these two sectors, this project can be like the baseline in order to have some more ideas and some more partnerships for the sectors that can be also funded in the next years. So this is just an open call for everyone. And I would like again to thank everyone, especially you, Celia, and HCMR and Mrs. Parpura, about the cooperation in this project.
Thank you very much, Orestes. I think that this is very important. I mean, ARIEL actually initiated this very important collaboration between different actors, strengthening this policy science framework with the participation of actors coming from this time the regional, let's say, administration, like the region from Western Greece, at least from the Greek side, but also research centers is really very important because indeed innovations can only happen when different actors come together, and of course when the industry, or of course in terms of small-scale fisheries we cannot talk about industry, but still, I mean, of the sector itself needs to join and actually guide the way forward. And in fact, ARIEL captured all that, those very interesting brokering events right from the beginning. I mean, I don't want to consume any more time. All this has been presented today and very thoroughly, both from our storytelling video, Mr. Grati, but also Ms. Peretta, who showed us all these policy recommendations. I think it was really a bottom-up approach project. And this is how it should be in small-scale fisheries for sure, but also in relation to aquaculture, some interesting ideas stemmed from, let's say, the work that has been taken place. I think that what we need to do, fully supporting what Orestes has just mentioned, is that we need to move on in a very collaborative way, looking at the next programming period, all the new chances and opportunities that will be there. I was not familiar with, the content that Orestes has presented, but I think it's very important actually to wait till it's finalized and actually look how interesting findings coming from ARIEL could actually, be embedded and integrated in the next programming period, and consider something that could be really interesting as a follow-up. So I don't want to take any more time myself, but I would like to ask if there are any, particularly Mr. Kokinos, for example, who I think is really an ICT, let's say, expert. And as Mr. Kokinos, you were actually trying to strengthen, let's say, the competitiveness of SMEs. Of course, what you showed us is relevant to aquaculture, let's say, applications. But you've seen, I think, what Mr. Bolonini, I mean, this effort coming from ARIEL, which actually tried to shorten this value chain of small-scale fisheries with the VIRMA application. I would like to hear how you see that. Do you think that this might be something that, let's say, could move further? And do you see that really, as yourself being an IT person, an IT expert, do you feel that this could be further improved and be of real added value to SMEs from fisheries? I'm not sure if you are familiar with small-scale fisheries, but I'm talking, generally.
I will preferably talk about aquaculture, because about fisheries is not the target of our project, but in general, I think that innovation and using, let's say, innovative approaches in aquaculture, there is enough room for such tools. Also, as you showed in your pilot action, there are several good practices where you have used IT infrastructure and IT tools in order to improve your approaches and, in general, the effectiveness of the units. So there is enough room. Since as a there is, for example, contrary to Turkey that has lower requirements in aquaculture units, I believe that the strength of European Union units should be investing in innovation and innovative IT tools. It could further enhance the sector. It could enhance the competitiveness of the aquaculture unit, and I think that such units should focus on IT tools and approaches.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokinos. I think that there's a lot of room for innovation, IT innovation in small-scale fisheries as well. Mr. Bolognini has, gave us an idea, but unfortunately, due to COVID pandemic, we were not actually able to test VIRMA further. We thought that we could do it in Greece, for example, but this was not possible, unfortunately. Hopefully, we will have the chance to move further towards this direction in a future project. Because really, I think that it is really, really very relevant. And as you showed us with withdrawals of small-scale vessels and all sorts of things that will come up during the next period, we need to think ahead and in an innovative way. So I would like to ask, because I see from the participants list that unfortunately lots of people were out of time, have left, and so we're actually mostly the ARIEL group and the two presenters. Do you have any more questions? If not, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Gratti and Mrs. Parpoura.
Well, I would like to comment.
Okay, Eric, please.
Yes, I think that apart from proceeding with future projects and further innovation, I think it's also important to expand, let's say, the findings of ARIEL project and other related projects to, let's say, other regions, regional units, let's say, within the macro Ionic region. Because, for instance, in Greece, we are only the region of Western Greece, but in the Ionian Sea, we have also the Ionian Islands. We have the prefecture of Epirus, which is, and the Peloponnese, which is not included. And I think also in other countries, there are regions which are so far not, let's say, not connected to this project or any project at all. So in order to strengthen, let's say, the macro region of the Adriatic-Ionian region as a whole, I think that is also an important aspect to try to include also more regional units for as far that's applicable in each member state in future projects. What do you think on that?
If I may react very quickly myself, and then, of course, the floor is open. I think that this is something that needs to be actually highlighted to, our governance, let's say, institutions. The point is that we all know, unfortunately, administrations are really fragmented. So this is something that, coming from central administration, we should have a better networking. This bottom-up, of course, is something very important, but also the top-down being more effective is something very crucial as well, and I'm sure you agree to that.
Yes, absolutely.
So my feeling is that not only for Greece, but I guess this is relevant for all different countries, we definitely need to have, let's say, better relationships and further integration of the different governance sectors. And of course, good practices such as the one coming from ARIEL and the region of the Western Greece, but also other regions with different projects, should be transmitted in an effective way through appropriate governance interventions. Unfortunately, we all know, because of course I'm coming from the science sector, but if there is no political will, we may have excellent scientific projects and, of course, interesting outcomes that may be not taking because there's not particular interest, from policy, but also, of course, from the industry. But if the industry is really interested in pushing things, then probably, political will be actually motivated. So this is why it's very important not only to strengthen the science policy interface, but also include the industry also, let's say, smaller sectors, like it's not small, it's very large SSF, but I'm talking in an industrial way of thinking, actually bringing the sectors on board and create trust and good relationships to actually push forward ideas that might be really of interest. So this is something very relevant, Eric, and I fully support that. I'm not sure if anybody else would like to comment on that. So Alkistis, would you like to actually, yes, move to the final part if there are no other interventions or comments?
Okay. So I would like, first of all, maybe I think I should also say something on that. I wanted to say something about the collaboration, that our efforts, let's say, was this bottom-up approach, and that we should make the fishermen that they have no means to intervene in the same way as other stakeholders, that we should give them a way to intervene and a way to collaborate. And although in the interviews in the beginning, they said that we don't think that we can collaborate, we don't think that we can put our efforts together, when the framework was there, when we created the framework in order for them to participate and to collaborate, then they could do that. And I think our role as administrators and as scientists is to facilitate this, this process. And I think ARIEL managed to do it pretty well on that. But I think I should give the floor, first of all, to Fabio Gratti, because he's our lead partner. So I think he's the one who is going to make the conclusions. So, Fabio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alkistis. And yes, what I can say, after 3 years of work, another project is approaching to its end. I think all the partners have contributed, doing their very best. I really say so. And I really want to say thank you to everybody. From my side, it was an honor for me to be part of this group. And I would also like the Adrian JS for the support provided in project implementation. And a special thank to Francesca Perretta, our super project manager, because I really think that without her, it would be quite impossible to complete the challenging tasks we promised in the application form. And yes, I also hope that the work that we did in the framework of our project ARIEL will be in some way capitalized in future projects, and this could help administration in developing effective policies towards the sustainable growth of small-scale fishery and aquaculture in the Adrian macro area. And concerning what has been said now, I think that apart the results obtained in the pilot projects, the most important result of ARIEL is a non-technological innovation that we proposed, and I hope this will continue in future. And I mean the way of resolving problems that fisher and fish farmer are facing every day by means of a transnational cooperation, which is facilitated by policymakers and led by scientists in cooperation with the enterprises. I really think that this could be the final footprint of this project. Even if ARIEL will finish, I hope this will be something to start, a starting point for the future.
All right.
On my side, I think I said everything. What I don't know if you have any question or any other
Thank you. Thank you, Fabio. I think that you said everything that you said, everybody agrees on them. I would like also to thank all the participants from Montenegro, from Croatia, from Italy, and from Greece. So I would like to say it not only in English, thank you, but also grazie, hvala, ευχαριστώ, to everybody, and I hope to meet you again pretty soon. And I once again want to extend the invitation to come to Messolongi whenever you feel like it, and we are going to accept you with all the Greek hospitality that we are famous for. That's all. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course, it was a pity to finish the project like this in a virtual way. But okay, we will see. Will be for the next one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you, everyone.
Fabio.
Bye-bye.